Right from here. Okay, so we're just starting with the basics here. What is an advisory committee? Why do they exist? First of all, I want to clarify that MFBF has a number of different committees. We have program committees, such as Young Farmers and Ranchers, Young Women's Leadership and Promotion Education. Organizational oversight committees, such as budget and long-range planning. But then today's focus is our issue advisory committee. And as Carly mentioned, these are the ones that are going to meet at summer conference. So again, the purpose of these committees is to surface the issues, ask questions, gather information, and advise on policy development in their area of expertise. So they also, we also do want our committees looking at policy that's currently in our policy book and clarifying that as well. Because sometimes we do have conflicting policy in our policy book. So that is one of their main purposes. What we expect out of these committees, out of the work that they do, is it could be a recommendation to the board of directors, but most often it is a recommendation to the counties to develop a policy resolution that can be taken to our annual convention. So I did want to give one example from a committee that came out of last year. The recommendation to the board of directors stated that MFBF lead a discussion with other agriculture and landowner groups to identify a proper definition for recreational land. So that was something they identified as an issue, and they created a recommendation to the board to take the lead on that. So that's just additional work that will go on outside of the actual committee meeting itself. So that is one example of what could come out of a committee. Another purpose of the committee is to share relevant information that they learned during their committee meetings with their fellow members back in their counties or in their districts. So as we mentioned, these advisory committees meet at summer conference. However, they really can be and should be actively meeting throughout the year, depending on what issues they have in front of them. So, and those meetings usually throughout the year take place virtually. So that's as at the discretion of the chair, or if an issue comes up that's relevant to the committee, it's definitely something that we encourage our committees to be doing, surfacing these issues throughout the year. And another thing that we talk about, and we've all probably experienced it, where there's a moment on the delegate floor where you really understand the scope of how complicated an issue is. And you think to yourself, we really should have been discussing this more in depth ahead of the delegate session. So that is really what committee work is there for. So if you have a complicated issue, whether it's a property tax issue or something like that, or water, doing that work ahead of the delegate session will be really valuable and save a lot of time there. Another example of something that a committee did along this line was the water committee held a virtual meeting with DNRC when they were rolling out House Bill 114 rules. And so for the committee to really understand from DNRC what those rules meant was valuable to us as an organization. So does anybody have any questions about what the committees are or why they exist, specifically these issue advisory committees? And if you want to, yeah, go on to the next slide. And this just gives you an idea of the committee chairs. These are issue advisory committees and the staff that are leads for them. That's pretty straightforward. And again, you won't see YF&R program committees, budget committee, but those committees do exist and are working on their own issues. Okay, next slide. All right, and these were just some of the issues that were identified as the top issues that were going to be discussed at this year's summer conference. So if you can see some of your committees there, that you can almost guarantee that these issues will be on the agenda at summer conference. And again, they were all surfaced from members gathering input, chairs gathering input. And I think that is it for me. So unless anybody has any questions, I'm going to kick it over to Sage.
Okay, so if any of you guys weren't able to join us at convention this year, you might wonder how you got on this committee. Well, it actually all started there. During convention, you have your district caucus, and in your district caucus, any member can be nominated to serve on these advisory committees. From those nominations, the president then appoints you for a 1-year term on these committees. So, as a committee member, you must be an active egg producer. You got to be well versed in your commodity or topic area in which you represent. And of course, you got to know your stuff because you were picked for this position from your district. 2 are appointed per district for each committee, and like I said before, you're only on here for a 1-year term. When we go back to annual convention in November, then there's a chance for a new member to get on that committee. And committee meetings are open to all MFBF members.
So that's how you got here. And now what do, right? These advisory committees are designed to provide an opportunity for membership to discuss and recommend solutions to problems that directly affect specific commodity topic areas. So Sue-Ann touched on all these a little bit, but let's dive a little bit deeper. The first one is identifying emerging issues in their commodity and topic areas. Nicole and I do our very best to keep up to date on all the emerging issues, but what 10 years of being in the trenches of ranching has taught me that you can contextually understand an issue really well, but until you've tried to apply it on your own operation, you still have a lot to learn. And that's what we need from you. So when you see emerging issues and you think about the ways that you would apply them on your operation, these committees can be a great place to bring that back to and then talk about it in a wider scope across the state. Because the way that a water issue impacts somebody on the east slope of the Rockies versus somebody in Sydney on the Yellowstone can be really different. And we want our policy to be well thought out and to be broad in scope. And committees are a great place for that to start. It's the true beginnings of the grassroots process. You'll also offer suggestions and clarifications to existing policies. An example of that is right now, property taxes are a big issue, and we have some really clear policy that we don't want any increase in tax burden for agriculture. But the questions come up, well, does tax burden include burden of proof or just fiscal burden? So there's a little teaser for you guys. There's some questions that we'll be asking. And then identify and recommend issues for policy development. So it's like Sue-Ann talked about, that moment on the delegate floor where we all say, boy, we should have talked about this a little bit more. This is the place to do that. And that can be at summer conference, or that can be through virtual meetings. And then the last one is, please let us know and the chair know if you can't make it to the meeting in person, or if you need a virtual option. We're always happy to help accommodate that. We love to see you in person, but we understand that sometimes things are really demanding at home, and we want to make sure that you have every opportunity to participate. So with that, I'll kick it over to Ricky, and she can talk about the duties of the chair.
And I would just add really quickly to that last bullet point that if by letting us know if you cannot attend, some committees have alternate delegates from their district, or alternate committee members from their district. And then that allows us to help make sure that we can contact those alternates and see if we can get them there and let them know that they're in one hotel room and lunch will be provided for them, since they would be serving in your stead.
Thanks for adding that, Scott. And then the other thing on the bottom of this slide is the recommendations and process that Sue-Ann covered with the way that it goes to the board. So, Ricky?
Thank you. I appreciate it. So this portion is specific to the chair of the meeting. But I would hope that all of you pay attention and make sure that you're holding the chair of your committee accountable to make sure that they're doing each of these things during your meeting. And I see somebody's in the waiting room. I'm going to admit them. So the chair is responsible for working with the staff coordinator to make sure that committee members are sharing topics that are relevant to the committee, sourcing those in order to craft the agenda. And that's where you'll kind of, like Carly was talking about, make sure that all of the relevant points that are going to help us with policy for the coming year are being listed within your agenda, and we're covering everything that we can to proactively be prepared for our policy development process. Within that, you can be the chair can be responsible for, with the help of the staff coordinator, for a committee member roll call. Like Sage mentioned in the very beginning, all of our committee meetings are open to any MFBF member. And so there's oftentimes a really good audience of those folks, especially at our summer conference, sitting in the room. But we want to make sure that we do have a quorum of the folks that are on the committee, and they're able to actively work on the roles and responsibilities of the committee. Additionally, the chair of the committee is responsible for appointing a secretary to take notes during the meeting. Oftentimes, Carly and I talked about this earlier, oftentimes it ends up being the staff person in the room, and that's absolutely okay. But if somebody else in the room wants to be backup secretary, or the chair themselves would like to take those notes and keep track of everything that happened within the meeting, that's absolutely a great thing to do. The minutes from those committee meetings are collected and put all of the committee meeting minutes are put together into one concise document after summer conference. And so it's often easier if the staffer is appointed the secretary, but again, that's the discretion of the chair. And then, of course, one of the most important things for the chair to do is run the meeting, chair the meeting, make sure that discussion stays on topic, on agenda, on time, especially at these events when we've got just a specific amount of time, that we respect everybody's schedule and that we get out of there when we're supposed to. The other responsibilities are to review the recommendations, if there were any, made to the MFBF board, and be able to attest to them should there be questions, and make sure that what is turned into the board is accurate from what was discussed within your meeting. Additionally, we said that you can schedule multiple meetings throughout the year. Virtually, more specifically, we're talking about getting together at summer conference for the purposes of this training. But if there's something that comes up and needs to be discussed, prior to September, before annual meeting season, that's to the discretion of the chair and the members of the committee. So don't feel like you're just going to get together one time and that's kind of the end of it. This is an active working committee group, and we hope that you'll use it to the most. I guess with that, wanted to let you know that it's time to start planning for our summer conference, and we hope that you as committee members have shared some topics with your committee chair and your staff coordinator, and you're getting some really meaty agendas put together so that we have some really good discussions in Miles City. All right, Scott, go get them.
Thank you, Ricky. Well, outside of the government, I don't think anyone loves an acronym like Farm Bureau does. So I'm going to talk about the prep work for your committee. And first off, the first P in prep stands for plan. So planning on taking in pre-conference meetings and briefings and training sessions. So first off, everyone who's on this training session gets a gold star and some brownie points for already planning to be a part of the summer conference. So thank you for taking your time out during our lunch hour today and being a part of this. But also, now that you know which committees you're on, plan on keeping an eye out for relevant information and plan on sharing that information with your committee chairman so that it helps them plan actually for the summer conference. So lots of planning, and that's the first part of prep. But then also read up. Our goal for our summer conference is the staff coordinators to work with the committee chair, for the committee chair to then reach out to each members of the committee and take a look at what they want to go over. And then once you decide what the committee is going to go over during their meeting, an agenda will be sent out, and read up on those issues that you're going to be discussing at whether it's a summer conference or one of our other committees. And so that's what the R stands for. But also once you read up, then you become an expert, and the E in prep stands for expertise. You've shown an interest in the particular committee that you were nominated for, or you're an expert in that issue or that topic area. And so it's very important to the members of your Farm Bureau district that you represent them with your knowledge of the issues and then what's going to be discussed at the committee meetings. And then the final P stands for participate. And not only participate during the meetings by speaking up and having your voice heard, but also if your committee makes a recommendation, participate by making sure your county farm bureau at least considers that recommendation if it is a policy recommendation that came from your committee. So that's what PREP stands for: plan, read, expertise, and participate. Just a couple other things. And it's been mentioned a couple of times that your committee, and based on the discretion of your chair, can meet at any time. And then Sue-Ann also gave an example of when a committee was called into action, such as the water committee, to take a look at what was going on some of their final decree issues and things like that. And from time to time, we will also as a staff coordinator, we'll reach out to your chair and request the committee that they meet in between to start discussions on issues that come up. For instance, the livestock committee was asked to take a look at possible second Montana checkoff for cattle, and that committee then met outside of the summer conferences. And then also, if we'd switch to the next slide, please. Here's a great resource for you. Farm Bureau University has training modules for committee members to take a look at and review what your duties are and what you can do to be the best participant and member of that committee and an asset to that committee. But then it's been said before, but I want to remind everyone that all of our committees are open to our Farm Bureau members. So even if you're not on a committee and there's a committee that has topics that are of interest to you during our summer conference, you can certainly sit in on those committee meetings as an audience member. And then as far as what the committee meetings will look like at summer conference, I think that most of you are familiar with our Farm Bureau meetings. We're usually business professional or business casual. Most of the time based on what each committee gives input on as far as what they'd like to see at their meeting during the summer conference. We'll have speakers that will help you get up to speed on those issues. And then we'll also, sometimes invite special guests such as, those folks like our Department of Livestock officer or maybe even the director of the Department of Agriculture to participate and give you updates on issues that are pertinent to what you're discussing. And then lastly, I would also mention sometimes our committees will meet at convention, and usually that's based on policy that comes from the county. So if there is policy, and I think that maybe it was Sue-Ann who mentioned this in her slide as well, but if there's an issue that we can foresee the need for a committee to maybe weigh in and dive into, that's going to be a subject of a resolution at convention, we'll ask those committees to meet before the convention starts. And that process kind of begins fairly long prior to the actual convention, because we need to book meeting rooms and things like that. So we ask all of our county farm bureaus to review the policy that they're going to discuss at convention. And when you see things that you feel like are a need for your committee to meet prior to convention, then just contact the staff coordinator or your committee chair, and we'll set that up and make sure that there's space available for you at convention. So I'd certainly take any questions and at any time during this training meeting, or if not, we can move on to Diana, and she's going to talk about our summer conference and our plans for that.
I think we've got a question from Russ, if you don't mind, Diana. Go ahead, Russ.
My question is on the chair and the committee meetings. Are we supposed to operate under Robert's Rules of Order?
Yeah, that's generally, and as far as our board meetings and whatnot, that is right in our bylaws that we are supposed to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. And then I think if I remember correctly, and I'm 99% sure, the beginning of our delegate session, they also vote on the rules for the session, and it's under Robert's Rules of Order. And so that would just, in my mind, naturally go to how we should operate during our committee meetings as well.
My suggestion then would be at the start of the committee meeting that we briefly go over Robert's Rules of Order. And, you know, sometimes this committee meetings kind of get to be a free for all, and we really need the chair to bring that back into order. So that would be my suggestion.
I can see Diana's taking that down, and I think what we'll do is put a Robert's Rules of Order briefing in your committee packets as well, and then also that's a good suggestion to go over that before the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. With that, I'll go on a little bit. Where are we going? We're going to Miles City. I'm really excited to be going a little bit closer to my home country in Miles City there. June 10th through 12th, if you don't have it on your calendar yet. We will be staying, your room block will be at the Sleep Inn Hotel in Miles City. Registration is open on our website. So if you want to jump on there, right on the homepage, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a summer conference block there, and just click on that and you can get yourself registered. I want to really stress getting your hotel rooms early this year. The hotels are not giving us any leeway at all on that. The room blocks are going to drop on May 8th. So if you aren't even sure if you're going, you might get your room blocked anyway, because they said they're not going to be extending that room block. There's a lot going on in Miles City, and we don't want you to miss out on the chance to be there. So May 8th, get those rooms reserved. Outside of that, the registration is due to us on May 30th. We need to get meals ordered, really important. You know, sometimes people think we can just give you meals on site. That's not always possible. We really have to get the food ordered and plan for that. And going on to expense reporting. Say just put a copy of the expense report up on the screen. Montana Farm Bureau will pay for one hotel room night for you for serving on a committee and attending your committee meetings. It'll be just one night. It isn't a night per committee you're on, it's one night. And also we'll cover your lunch. So it's the cost of one night plus the tax. So put the tax in there as well. And it is really important to save a copy of your receipt and submit that with it. And then return that expense form to the state office. Please don't try to give it to a staff member who is at the conference, because then they might get misplaced somewhere. But it's just safer if those can be sent in scanned. Electronic is perfectly fine by me. You can send it off to me that way. Does anybody have any questions on those expense reports? I do need them in by August 30th. That's a little bit ahead of our fiscal year end, because once we get too late on those expense reports, we're in a different budget year and I won't be able to reimburse you. Any other expenses you have, such as mileage, outside meals, things like that, are up to you. Sometimes some of the counties might help you out if you check with them. It's a possibility, but not all of them can. And that is pretty much what I had for you guys on registration. Does anybody have any questions? No? If not, I guess I'll turn that back over to Carly.
All right, thank you all for all that wonderful information. I did receive a message asking to go over the policy process. So That will start at county farm bureaus. County farm bureaus at their annual meeting will pass the policy. If it passes at the county level, then it goes to our state convention in Billings. If it passes there and it is national in nature, it will go on to the AFBF convention, where it will go before the AFBF delegate body. So that's the other thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about issues, is that they can be national in scope. Yeah, there's just another step in that process. Scott, I see you're unmuted. Did you
Yeah.
have something to add?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think it's important to note that what we're doing at our summer conference, and it's been said before, but it's a good thing to reiterate, is we're starting the process. And these committees can come up with policy recommendations that still go to the County Farm Bureau. We'll never bypass our county farm bureaus and, you know, our federated structure for policy development. That ensures that everything comes from the grassroots. But this is an effort for those who are volunteered to be experts in different areas to come up with ideas that they believe that we need to consider as an organization. So they may come up with an idea, but they're not passing policy in their committee meetings. We would never bypass that natural federated structure that's been our bedrock. Our grassroots is our bedrock, and it's been like that for over 100 years. And so I think that's important to note.
Thank you, Scott. Scott, could you also share where to find the policy book online?
Yes. So I'm just going to open up. Okay. So if you go to mfbf.org, one of the top menu items is policy and advocacy. If you click the down arrow there, then you see overview, priority issues, and policy book. So you just click on that policy book, and then there is a link to the most recent adopted policy book right on that page.
Do they need to be logged in to see that, Scott?
Yeah, good question. You do need to be logged in to be able to get to that, because it is members only information.
Thanks for sharing that. Ricky, could you cover how to get onto Farm Bureau University? Because you need to log in there as well, don't you?
You do, and we have a state-specific code if you've never been on Farm Bureau University. And that might be something that I can send out in some follow-up to each of you, because it's just, I can't remember the code off the top of my head, but it's very simple, like MT, anyways.
I think it's like MTBF.
Yeah, FB or yes.
Yeah, FB.
But anyway,
yeah.
we can share that directly, and that'll also have the direct link to Farm Bureau University to get logged on there. That's just a training module that the American Farm Bureau has produced. And there's actually some really meaty stuff on there for county Farm Bureau boards, for planning, budgeting, some example forms that you can use, you know, in your home county, but also in this committee process. So if you haven't been on that or haven't heard about that yet, we will send out some information on logging in. And if you have any questions, I've kind of accidentally fallen into the role of becoming the Farm Bureau University person on staff. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer or walk you through it. They have some really good program examples that have been award-winning on the American Farm Bureau level and things like that. So again, we'll get that out to you guys so that you can check it out on your own time and log in, and you can utilize that at any time. But like Carly said, there's some really great committee specific content on there, and we'd love for you to check that out. So that's forthcoming.
Thank you, Ricky. I know every time as a new staff member, when I'm like, oh, we should create a training on this, or like, actually, Ricky's like, it's on Farm Bureau University. So
you don't have to waste our time. It's there.
yes, if you can think it, it's probably on there.
Yeah.
All right. What questions do you all have? What have you seen that worked well in committees that you would want to share suggestions on that we may have missed? You're welcome to just unmute and share as you please.
this is Butch, and since I do have to run here quickly, why, I'll just jump on for a second. I don't have anything real innovative in this department, but except I guess just the more, and that was brought up, try to be up to date on whatever area you're in and kind of study it along. And there are a lot of things happening right now as we speak. Joe Goggins is, with getting young, making it, I don't know whether easier is the right word, but more possible to get the younger ranchers and farmers back in the fold of the business and a successful business too. So that's something that's ongoing that we can pick ideas from, I think, and as well as other things that are going on. I know Farm Bureau is always active in something, and there are other farm and ranch organizations doing the same. So I guess this is, for me, it's just a good reminder that this is coming up soon. And it'll be here before we know it. So I'll leave it at that. Dorian will be here though for a while to carry on. So.
And I would just add to that too, and you mentioned some of the other agriculture organizations that are working on issues that are important in our industry. And Montana Stockgrowers Association have reached out to us regarding their producer profitability workshops and events. And we do have a number of Farm Bureau people who have already attended or will be attending those meetings. And in addition, I been in contact with their executive, Rayleigh, and I've invited her to put together a list of priorities that come from their findings in their meetings, and then we would share those at least for consideration with the appropriate committees, so that we're on the same page, looking at the same issues that their members feel are important. So we just have so much crossover in membership. And if their folks think it's important and it's something that we already haven't thought of, then it's probably worth our committees to discuss that as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Scott, and thanks for sharing that also, Butch. Anyone else have anything that they'd like to share or questions that they might have?
This is Darcia. I would just like to put a request out there that if you are on a committee, please participate and respond to any emails or texts or activities from either the state office or committee chairs. I think there's too much ignoring of some of these things. And that's all.
Thanks for sharing that, Darcia. And I know I've been guilty of just reading it and filing it away in my head. And sometimes just a simple like, thank you, I received this is helpful. Because we do sometimes just send out emails into space, and that seems to be where they go. So it's nice to get a little feedback. And I will say the feedback that at least I received, and I know some other staff members expressed this too, when we asked for what your top issues were, we were really excited about how much feedback we did get back. So thank you for all of you that do participate as well.
The other thing that's troubling for us sometimes is Montana Farm Bureau emails end up in people's junk folder. So if you do respond, we know you've at least received it in the right inbox. So keep that in mind as well. And check your junk just in case.
Yes, thank you. That's a good reminder too, Ricky. And sometimes we don't have the right emails because emails do have a tendency to change. So keep that in mind also. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add or any questions that they'd like to cover? All right, Scott, Ricky, Diana, Sage, anyone else, anybody have anything else that staff wants to make sure gets heard?
I would just say that we're extremely excited to see you all in Miles City this June. It's one of our favorite times of the year. It's kind of like a Farm Bureau family reunion, and we're putting together a great program and can't wait to see you all in Miles City.
It does sound like it's going to be very fun. Ricky and Alina did a little dry run a couple weeks ago, and it's going to be great. I would also add the hotel rooms. There are 2 other conferences happening there at the same time. So this is for real. If you do not book your room, you will not have a room. So please, please do that. And then May is membership month. Don't forget May is membership month. Your RMs have a really exciting membership recruitment menu that will be coming to you soon. So be sure to ask them about that. And thank you all for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
Sayonara. We'll see you all in Miles City. Thanks for taking the time.
See you in June.